Welcome again, and in today's topic we are going to discuss the introduction to public policy, which we will focus on the meaning, characteristics, categories and instruments of public policy. So let's be together in this discussion, and I hope after this discussion you will get a comprehensive understanding about public policy. Let's start. So what is a policy? So in order to understand what is a policy, we have to understand how does the government works. So we can start by saying that a policy is a form of decision in the plan of action adopted by an actor or actors to achieve a particular goals. So a policy is an explicit or implicit single decision or group of decisions initiate or guide implementation of previous decisions. What is public policy? Public policy is a more specific term applied to a formal decisions or plans of action that has been taken by or has involved a state organization. In a simple term, we can define public policy as a government choose to do or not to do. So it is what a government choose to do or not to do. So this is how we can say public policies. So it is what a government choose to do or not to do. So this is public policy. So a public policy is what a government choose to do. So it is an action that is taken by a government to address issues that exist in a society. So it is what government do in order to address issues in a society. Fundamental characteristic of public policy. What is public policy? In order to understand more about public policy, we have to understand the fundamental characteristics of public policy. The first public policy characteristic is goal-oriented. Public policy is goal-oriented. Specific goals and objectives drive public policy. It aims to address societal problems, promote public welfare, and achieve desired outcomes. Public interest. Public policies are rooted in the concept of serving the public interest. It benefits the broader society rather than specific individual or groups. Policies are intended to address common concern, enhance social well-being, and ensure equitable distribution of resources and opportunities. Authority and legitimacy. Legitimate public organizations or government agencies create and carry out public policies. It functions in accordance with the country's laws and constitution and reflect the mandates and authority given to elect official or appoint administrators. Decision making. Public policy is created by decision-making process. It comprises recognized societal issues, acquiring data on those issues, then selecting options, and lastly, choosing the best course of action to solve the problem or the issue. Policymakers consider various factors, including evidence-based research, expert opinions, stakeholder inputs, and political consideration to make informed decisions. Policy instruments. Public policy employs a range of instruments or tools to achieve its goal. These instruments are legislations, regulations, taxations, subsidies, initiatives, information campaign, and institutional arrangements. Policy instruments are chosen based on their effectiveness, feasibility, and the specific context in which they are applied. Stakeholders engagement. Public policy involves engaging various stakeholders, including citizen, interest groups, business, and experts. Their input help to shape policy decision, ensure accountability, and enhance the legitimacy and effectiveness of the policy making process. Dynamic and adaptive. Public policy is not static. It involves the adapts over time in response to changing circumstances or environment, societal needs, and the changing emerging challenges. Policymakers continually reassess policies to consider new evidence, technological advancements, and the feedbacks from the stakeholders to ensure the policy remain relevant and practical. What are the categories of public policy? Thomas Lawes 1964 argued that policy can be classified into distributive policy, regulatory policy, redistributive policy. So let's dive into the main idea of understanding these categories of public policy. Let's start with distributive policy. Distributive policy allow government actors to provide beneficial goods and services to a majority of population at the expense of all taxpayers. They are designed to improve the equitable distribution of goods and services by providing benefits to a large portion of the population rather than by taking from one group to another or giving to another group. Distributive policies are easy to reorganize and the policy goals are typically easy to identify. The public encounter distributive policy every day, for example, including public roads and public education. So these are services that are provided to all the public without considering any aspect. So they are distributive policies. Another is regulatory policy. Regulatory policies allow the government to compel certain beneficial behavior from individual or group while discouraging other behaviors. Government regulatory policies involve the implementation of rules by government actors, rules that are backed by laws. For example, prohibition of driving under the influence of alcohol, government policies limiting the price of electricity and water utilities, safety requirement for pharmaceuticals, limitations on toxic emissions, and pollutants from factories, and the minimum safety required for workers are all examples of regulatory policies. Redistributive policies. Redistributive policies are policies which aim at reallocating wealth, property, political or civil rights, or some other valuable item to the advantage of class-based group. While those policies often involve economic decisions, they can also involve the redistribution of social status. For instance, redistributive economic policies include the distribution of income and wealth from wealthier societies or population to the poor society. Civil rights policies are intended to provide social benefits to minority and women so that they can obtain economic and social equity. So what is the difference between redistributive and distributive? Redistributive policies are more controversial than distributive policies because they provide benefit to specific groups at the expense of others. What are the policy instruments? Policy instruments are instruments that can be used by government to ensure that they implement policies or they make the policies that have already been implemented into action. So The helping factors can be capacity building. So after formulation of a policy or adapting a policy, you have to give education to the people so that they understand what the policy aim, so to avoid the misinterpretation of the policy. Another is taxation. So a taxation can be used to tax out for the aim of getting fund of in order to take out actions, in order to carry out actions which can actually support the policy. Another is borrowing. You can borrow fund or money to ensure that you run out or to implement a certain policy. Another is economic initiatives. To give economic initiatives to in order to support the implementation of policy. Lastly, we see rule and regulations. These are rules or regulation imposed so that to guide the implementation of policy, or to make sure that policy are well implemented and adapted. So no one can actually go against the policy that have already been implemented or is on the implementation stage.